Welcome to our episode on public speaking. My name's Megan.
And I'm Nathan.
Today we will be talking about 10 different tips that you can use for as a peer educator for public speaking, as well as we will be offering insight on our own public speaking fears.
That's right. And then at the end of the video, we will please ask you to write down three of your biggest concerns when it comes to public speaking, as well as three tips from our list that might help you overcome them. Do you want to
Yeah.
get started on some of our
Yeah.
biggest
So
fears?
one of my biggest fears is fear of forgetting. So I can be super prepared and have all of my visual aids
Mm-hmm.
and practice and all these things, and I'll get up there and just blank and freeze and just completely lose my spot.
Like lose your train of thought.
Yeah. So I've done this before. I remember that I was giving a speech and I was super prepared and I had all my points made and everything, and then I just completely lost my train of thought
Yeah.
and I just froze. And so the way I combated that was I um, really just focused on my breathing, and then I really just took a sec and like focused on my speech, and then I eventually found my spot and I made it through.
Wow, good job. How long did it take, do you think, in real time for you to find your find your focus again?
Yeah, so I for me it felt like an eternity,
Mm-hmm.
but realistically it was probably only like 3 to 5 seconds.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, so
Yeah, it felt like forever, right? But
yeah,
for the audience, it was probably just a few seconds.
yeah, and the nice thing is like they might have even just thought that it was a part of the speech.
Or just, yeah, your natural. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um, okay. One of mine is fear of judgment.
I
I don't
totally
know.
understand
I don't
that.
know what that is really. I think it's just something we all have, especially when we're in front of a bunch of people. Suddenly, everything we're wearing, how we look, how we stand, our posture is now magnified. So,
Yeah, I
it's just really it really can kind of get to you and maybe even interfere with what you're trying to do.
yeah,
But, I'm sure it's not as bad as you think it is when you're standing up there. But
right. It
yeah.
just you really think about it yourself, and the audience probably isn't even paying attention to
Yeah, they're
it.
probably not, but it's
Yeah,
still there, especially when you're in front of a bunch of people.
yeah, for sure.
What's another one that you have?
Another one of mine is perfectionism. So, like I said
Yes,
earlier,
me
like
too.
I prepare really heavily and make sure I have all my ducks in a row, but I'm just like really hyper focused on the small things and making sure it goes perfectly. And
Right.
realistically, it doesn't always go as I plan it in
Well,
my head.
yeah, it never does.
Right. So that's just kind of one of my fears is making sure my speech and presentation is perfect.
I think, yeah, I get that too. I'm also a perfectionist. Also, I'm just worried about not being perfect, which is,
Right.
not realistic. So, yeah, I totally understand that. Yeah, being perfectionist it can be exhausting.
Yeah, really is.
Let's see. I have one more here is fear of being unprepared. Like, I put all this work into this, I go into it feeling confident, and then I
Right.
get up there and suddenly I notice 100 different things that I feel like I could have done better or that I should have maybe added, something
Right.
like that. And it's the last thing you want to do is start really thinking about all the things you should have done better that you already didn't do, especially when
Right.
you're in the process of doing it. So, and this has happened to me a few times. Usually I usually overcome it just because now I know that what I've done is good. I've put in the work, the time,
Right.
and it's it is it's done. And so I'm gonna deliver this best I can,
Yeah.
and I have confidence that it's gonna be enough.
Yeah. Thank you for that insight.
Yeah. Do we want to maybe get into some tips about how we
Yeah,
can maybe overcome
absolutely.
these?
So, as we said earlier, we have 10 different tips. So, our first one is nervousness is normal. So, as we had kind of spoke earlier, it's really nice knowing that you're not alone and that you can be super prepared or even unprepared in that same sense, and you still would feel nervous and like
Same amount of nervousness, probably. Yeah.
exactly. Just knowing that it's normal and you're not alone in that.
Yeah, it's what makes us, we all do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Number two here, know your audience. So this is more of just like a broad knowing of your audience, right? You don't need to know everything about each individual who's going to be there and do background checks on all of them. More like, who are you going to be speaking to as a whole? Demographic, especially, I think is important. Age, whether it's at a university or are you going to do a presentation at like in a professional work setting? That's going to
Yeah,
help you to change your presentation or your speech, whatever it might be, so that it's fitted to your audience and they're going to pay attention more.
yeah, absolutely. I don't have anything to add to that. Our next one is organize your material in the most effective manner to attain your purpose. So I think a really great way to help with that is having an outline. So an outline is really great because it helps you to not read off your paper as well as quote unquote having room for mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot more flexible in that manner as well as um,
It's also simplified too. It's not a
yeah,
full script that you
yeah,
have to follow verbatim. It's just kind of something, you can peek at it, say, okay, yep, this is how this is
yeah.
progressing.
And it just kind of keeps you on track as well. So
Yeah,
you're able
right.
to hit all those points
Yeah,
and yeah,
yeah, great. Number four here is watch for feedback and adapt to it. Now, this one is great, but it can be a little bit of a slippery slope, I think, because while it's great to pay attention to your audience, find out, look to see maybe how engaged they are. If you feel like you need to change your tone or maybe move on to the next topic a little faster, that's great. But like we were talking about earlier, if we're paying too close attention to our audience, it can be distracting from what we're trying to convey.
right.
So, do it in moderation, I
Because
think.
too much can be harmful, but you also just want to see how your audience is feeling, and then like if you throw in a joke or
Yeah, like if you're losing them.
yeah, exactly. So our next one, number 5, is let your personality shine through. So with the information that you're presenting on, we want to hit all those notes, but it's also important to really show yourself through that, and you're able to connect with your audience more when you can show your more human self and not
Mm-hmm.
so much robotic.
Robotic, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I think that actually plays really well into this next one here. Use humor, tell stories, and use effective language. I think good, authentic humor and telling stories that humanize you comes through your natural personality. And
yeah,
if you're doing that in an authentic way, I think you're going to be able to connect with your audience a lot better, and they may even feel more uh, more
engaged.
engaged to want to listen to what you're saying.
Yeah,
Yes,
for sure.
exactly.
I also think it can help with that nervousness feeling as well. So,
Yeah, when you drop the veil and you're just like, this is me and this is what I'm doing. And yeah,
exactly.
I think so
And
too.
your audience sees that as well.
Yeah, definitely. They will pick up on it.
Our next one, number 7. So, work from an outline, do not read unless you have to. So, we kind of mentioned that earlier, but it really is important. So, you're not, whether that's just reading off your paper, if you're reading off a screen, um, you want to try to stay away from that as much as possible because also engaging with your audience. So if you have a bunch of things on the screen, they're also going to read it and they're going to stop paying attention to you.
True, yeah.
So you don't want to have it all on there, as well as you don't want to be a robot and just read from a screen because,
Oh, eye contact, probably, I think.
right, eye
Yeah.
contact, movement, all those aspects really help cater your presentation.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Number eight, use your voice and hands effectively. Leave out nervous gestures. This is great for me. I like to talk with my hands a lot. I think it can add to an overall conversation, a story that you're trying to
Yeah,
tell, what have
absolutely.
you. The leaving out the nervous gestures, that one is also big for me because I know I get hyper focused on what mine are. And
Right.
when I do that, then they tend to come out a little bit more. So I think it's important to add to this. Maybe know what your nervous gestures are, and then you might be able
Yeah.
to avoid them a little better.
And come up with some strategies to help
Yeah.
avoid those as well. I also think a really great add on to that is for if you're fidgeting with your hands or you're crossing your legs or whatever it might be, you can use movement in your favor. So you could walk across
Mm-hmm.
the room, or if you have a handout, you can use that.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, it can work well with you.
Yeah. Sure.
Our next one is attention grabber at the beginning and then closing with a dynamic end. So you only have one time to get your audience's attention right away. It's right at the beginning. So whether that's a visual aid, it's a video, asking your audience a question, whatever that might be, that's a really important factor to really get their attention and tell them what you're going to be speaking about.
Yeah. Kind of sets the tone a little bit too.
Exactly.
And then close with a dynamic end. I always like when I'm listening to a speech or a presentation, a good summary helps me. Just to
Absolutely.
really highlight those things that maybe because I will go back and look at what those highlights were. So like, okay, let me double check
Right.
that. Did I understand that? It's very helpful.
Or if your audience seems a little distracted and didn't pick up on all of your points, just really highlighting it and what you covered. And then you can also ask your audience questions as well on
Yeah,
information.
yeah,
And yeah,
yeah. At the very end. Okay, last one here, number 10. Use audio visual aids wisely. So this kind of goes into what you were talking about. If you have a bunch of words or a bunch of information on a slide, the audience is probably going to start focusing on that more than what you are talking about.
right.
It's a great tool, though.
Oh, absolutely. So, like we said earlier, like whether it's pictures, videos, and interactive activity,
Mm-hmm.
it can work really well. You just don't want to overdo it.
Yeah.
And so you don't want your audience reading all your presentations, or because then they can become distracted or less engaged with what you're talking about.
Right. But I mean, if you do it correctly, they can really aid in, they'll add to what you're trying to discuss for
Yeah,
sure. Yeah. Well, that's all 10. Do you want me to, real quick, I can just run through them again?
yeah,
Okay. So, number 1, nervousness is normal. Number 2, know your audience. Number 3, organize your material in the most effective manner to attain your purpose. Watch for feedback and adapt to it. Let your personality shine through. Number 6, use humor, tell stories, and use effective language. Number 7, work from an outline. Don't read it unless you have to. Number 8, use your voice and hands effectively. Leave out nervous gestures. Number 9, attention grabber at the beginning. Close with a dynamic end. And number 10, use audio visual aids wisely.
yeah. So those are all really great tips. So you can use these not only as a peer educator, but as well as in your life and your college career as well. But yeah. Um, Next, we just ask you to write down, as mentioned earlier, 3 of your own public speaking fears, anxieties, concerns, whatever that may be for you, as well as writing down 3 tips from that list that you can utilize. So this will help prepare you for our next video.
Right, which is we are going to be interviewing a public speaking expert. So
Yeah,
we hope to take those biggest fears that you have written down, and hopefully we can address what they are in more detail and get a lot more insight from our experts on our next episode. So
yeah.
great. All right. Well, thank you, Megan.
Thank you, Nathan.
Yeah, you're